What's up, everyone? This is your host, Aileah, back with another episode of I'm Breaking into Tech. Remember that this is an affirmation because you all are breaking into tech. And if you are in tech, we're going to level up in tech as well. So, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, which is actually one of my second favorite months out of the year, I wanted to have a panel discussion about the importance of mental health, not only in the workplace, but also in life. Especially right now, we all have experienced the hardships of trying to land new roles, trying to make career transitions, and for some of us, even layoffs. So we know that this has been a trying time. And a lot of people don't think about the impact that your mental health has on your career. So I wanted to talk about that firsthand, as this has been the number one motivation for me making a career change. So if any of you are not familiar with me and my story, again, my name is Aileah. I actually spent over 10 years in human resources and recruitment. I dabbled in project management as well, but I was extremely burnt out and overwhelmed. So many of the things that just caused me to have mental anxiety, emotional distress, and I just didn't feel like I was in a place of support or that would, understand the level of stress that I was going through. Heard so many great things about the software industry, how they had paid mental health days, which was unheard of. And I worked in the healthcare industry, which was crazy. But I've never heard of companies having that, never heard of companies having unlimited PTO. It was just so many things. And possibly what contributed to my downfall was that I was working during the pandemic, like many of you probably who are coming from that same industry, but on the administrative side, where I had to convince people that healthcare was great, healthcare is good, and just endure all of the stress of everyone. So I decided to make a career transition into the software industry, utilize all of my skills, and 2 years later, I'm here as a technical program manager. I broke into tech as a solutions architect initially, but I don't have any technical degree. I have a degree in English. My minor is HR management, and I don't have any certifications. So, but what I did use is my transferable skills to help me um, highlight the skills that will be most useful for the company. Okay. But I would say since I've made this transition, my mental health has been, top priority, not only for myself, but for my employers. And I've always felt very supported. So I wanted to have this discussion with you all, and also three lovely, lovely guests who are very, very advanced in their careers. Some are international speakers, um, some are sales directors, some are regional sales directors, but all very, very accomplished ladies. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome our panelists. Hello, ladies.
Hey,
Hi,
hi.
how are you?
Hey, how y'all
Hello.
doing?
Great.
All right,
Good. How are
so
you?
doing great. So we already got some people in the chat. So Benjamin says he's excited to tap in, looking forward to this. And then we have Deborah, who's also looking forward to. Thank you all for showing up. Y'all are early. I appreciate that. So before we jump in and allow our guests to introduce themselves, if this is your first time tuning in with us, let us know. Also, let us know where you're tuning in from. So whether you are in the United States, if you're international, sometimes we have international guests. So let us know your country or city or state. And I will go around the room here in the order. So to my right, if it looks the same to you all, I have Monique, and then we have Erica and Dex. So we'll go in that order. So just introduce yourselves, your title, and let us know where you are geographically located.
All right. Well, first, I am so grateful to be here on this conversation because I mean it's necessary, right? I'm Monique Russell. I am currently in the Atlanta, Georgia area, but I grew up in the Bahamas, in the beautiful islands of the Bahamas, before I moved to the United States. And I'm just looking forward to what we're going to talk about. So, thank you for having me, Aileah.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to have you.
Awesome. So I'm Erica Franklin. I'm the director of sales for Sistas in Sales, the largest organization of women of color in sales. I'm currently, well, I was originally, I'm from Maryland. I used to live in the DMV area, and now I am based in Ghana, West Africa.
Very cool. And I'm Dex. I am a regional director for a cybersecurity company, and I am also based out of Atlanta, Georgia.
All
Yes.
right. So that means y'all gonna
Monique.
meet up. Y'all gonna meet up for coffee, and I'm gonna meet up with y'all in a couple of weeks when I come down there for render.
Perfect. Perfect.
All
What
right.
about
Well,
me?
No.
I
You
mean,
don't have to come on. We have to come to you.
I can't make it there in 2 weeks now, but I'll be there eventually. But I'm
All
happy
right.
to have you all. So this is already a very diverse panel that we have here. So I'm really excited, and I can't wait to get into everyone's stories. Some I already know. Some will be new to me as well it is to you all. And I forgot to tell you all where I'm located. So I am located in North Carolina. I was born in New Jersey, raised in Durham, North Carolina, and I'm still in North Carolina, but I moved to multiple cities. So that's where I'm at right now. So if I sound country, it's because I am.
I love that.
You did a great job with your accent, Monique. I can hear it, but it's very tame. So
Oh, it's not. It's not. It's tamed intentionally.
yeah,
I have
The
multiple,
code switch is real.
multiple.
you heard it come out a little bit. I
The
love
code
that.
switch
I
is
love
real.
that. We have somebody here from South Carolina. Okay, so
Nice.
right down the road. Awesome. So let's go ahead and jump in. So again, if this is your first time tapping in with us, let us know where you're tuning in from, whether that be your city, your state, or your country. Okay. And while we are doing that, I want to jump into the discussion. So one of the reasons why I decided to bring these ladies on is because one, some I was introduced to, some I've actually seen you all doing your thing for a while, and you're very consistent, but also you just seem like you have a very interesting story. And I'm tired right now. I'm exhausted, so I can just imagine how much you all have to contribute. And for those of you all who have families of your own, I really want to tap into where you find the strength to even do the things that you do on a daily basis. And I do have an order that I want to go into, but I would actually like to kick it off with Dex because I'm really curious about you. How did you get into your role as a regional director of technical account management, and
Mhm.
what is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started off as in technical support, working in payroll, and I really just asked a lot of questions and wanted to learn more. But then my second place that I moved from corporate to a startup, and it was really just word of mouth that got me in the door. But again, I was in technical support and I worked my way up. And so I asked again a lot of questions, and I kind of came to my one-on-ones, making sure where I wanted to go. I asked questions that were pertaining to that role, right? So if I wanted to be a team lead, then I would say, what qualifications does the team lead have that I don't have? And so just being really curious and making sure that I was intentional about my next steps is how I got to where I am right now. And being regional director, that means that I essentially manage a team of 10 that are all on a certain coast. So they're on the East Coast, and they manage a book of clients. So for cybersecurity.
That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about where you actually started? Were you always in the software industry?
I was not. I was not. So I am actually a neuroscience major. I was going to go to medical school, and I started, and I just got really burnt out really fast. And so I started working at Best Buy originally, and I was like, oh, I kind of like tech. I like fidgeting with things. And then I transitioned into the corporate space. So then I worked at ADP as a technical support agent there. And we had physical time clocks and we had the software. So I got my hands on both, and I just kind of moved up from there. And then to my next startup as well, which was primarily software. So.
Okay, so was there a particular reason why you chose the startup world, or is that just something that you fell into?
I would say it was something I fell into. I didn't know about startups initially, and I was a little nervous to be in such a new company. I think that that's always something that can be nerve-wracking with the lack of processes and it just being something that you are unsure of. But it is something that I kind of fell into by word of mouth and by my LinkedIn connections. So,
That's awesome. So
yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a few more questions here
Yeah.
because I've never had a guest on my show that was in technical account management. So for a lot of my viewers, this is new to them as well. So can you tell us a little bit more? I know you talked about like having a list of accounts that you oversee, but can you talk about it a little bit more and what makes it technical?
Yeah, absolutely. So that aspect is mainly them doing background coding and or knowing the platform. And so the platform that we use in particular it helps with cybersecurity and managing assets. And so the book of business that a technical account manager may have, they may have, let's say, 15 accounts, and they would assist someone on the vendor. We are the vendor, and they would assist someone on the client side to help navigate the platform. So they could potentially be building out dashboards or reports, finding rogue devices, things of that nature. And so that's the technical aspect. Sometimes we work with support to ensure bugs are resolved. And sometimes we're, like I said, building dashboards or reports in the platform. So that's really the technical part of it.
So to me, this sounds similar to customer success. Is it similar? Okay.
Very much under the umbrella of customer success. So we usually have a technical account manager, you might have an account executive, and you might have support. That's usually like a customer success umbrella, or you might have a CSM, a customer success manager. And those people all work together to ensure that the client renews and that the client is satisfied with the product that they've purchased.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
Of
So
course.
I wanna ask one more question
Of course.
before we open up. Being that you are in a customer facing role, right? And it's after the client has purchased the software, so they already have at least one experience with the company. But then the goal of the technical account manager is to make sure that the customer continues to be happy and purchases more, or basically retain them. What are some of the day-to-day stresses that you may experience in this type of role, and even being a leader?
Yeah. I would say I'm going to pull from my employees because my stress is a little different. But I would say that it usually comes into play if there's a bug in place that has caused an outage that could really be stressful for the client and the TAM, the technical account manager. just because they're unable to use the platform. I think that the biggest thing that I see is that we don't teach our clients how to fish. And so we don't teach them how to use the platform, but we tend to solve the issues for them, or we ask support to solve the issues for them. And so that becomes a big stressor when you are trying to manage a really large book of business, or you have several clients asking for certain things all at one time. Especially being in a startup, you do wear several hats. So you could also be working on training. You could also be helping assist with some marketing videos or things of that nature. And so it becomes a little stressful when you aren't managing or prioritizing your tasks appropriately. But I would say the main stressor is our clients. We have to teach them how to fish. We have to teach them how to use the platform, and then we can kind of support them or guide them when they have issues versus doing everything for them.
I love that, and I work for a startup now, so I completely understand what you're talking about. And I would even say that the biggest obstacle sometimes is communication. Just making sure that everyone understands their role, understands what they need to be doing, and also the level of support that they are going to receive. Because a lot of times in roles like that, you'll have clients that just expect you to do everything for them. So you have to kind of gently set those boundaries and whatnot. So I would definitely say communication is probably, the most important thing to overcome all of those obstacles. Well, at least for me. I don't know about y'all.
It's a good one.
But thank you, Dex. So with that in mind, we have Monique Russell. She is a expert in communication. So I really want to talk to you, Monique. So something very unique about Monique's background. She's not necessarily in tech. However, she works directly with many type of leaders and organizers. And she has a footprint in the tech industry as well. But being that we're talking about communication, being that we're talking about mental health, which has a direct correlation, I really want to tap into your story, Monique, how you came about even discovering that this is something that you wanted to do.
Yeah, so I told you I grew up in the beautiful islands of the Bahamas, right? So I left the Bahamas and I was living with my mom, my stepdad, and my two brothers. And then I left at 17 by myself to come and pursue my American dream, right? So think about leaving one culture, going into another culture. And then for the first 8 years of my life, I didn't know my biological father. So I got to meet him, and he is from Nigeria. So fitting in and learning to connect with his culture was a whole nother experience too. So when I went to school, I went to study to be a broadcast journalist. I was supposed to be on TV covering stories all around the world, digging up into the who's of who's, the what's of what's, and like putting the story together for people to consume and digest. And then I went on to do 2 other graduate degrees in public relations and advertising. And if you know anything about those industries, you'd say that they have competing interests sometimes. They say, oh, the journalists take one side and the PR folks are just spin doctors. But that's part of why I wanted to go into both, to get a holistic view. So when I graduated, I did not find a job in the field that could sustain me, that could take care of me. At that time, I had become a teenage mom during my early college career, and I embraced that, and I thrived in those environment when I was working 3 jobs and just going to school full time and raising my son. I thrived during that period because I was able to connect with people who were strangers, who became my friends, and then they became like family. So here I am now looking for this great, beautiful opportunity, probably applied to like 100 jobs and didn't get in. Catch 22. You need one thing to get in there and you don't have this experience and blah, blah, blah. So I found myself in executive support roles. And that's where I first was introduced into the tech space in Silicon Valley. I found myself in executive support. I found myself executive support also in healthcare roles, healthcare companies as well. But for me, the way I got here is pretty much I found myself in those environments. And over time, I realized that they were not giving me the fulfillment that I was seeking. So yes, I had a good time. Yes, I had great relationships. I wasn't stressed out in those environments. I was plugged in and connected, just being the bubbly person that I am. But when it came time to marrying my passion for communications, having the expertise to do what I want to do in the way that I want to do it, and to be compensated, well for it, I didn't find that fulfillment there. So as I would sit at my desk, sometimes in my corporate role, I would imagine what it would look like to provide communication skills training. I would literally write out at my desk solutions to the problems that I was observing in the market, in my environment, in the
Okay.
office where I was. And so it was almost like I was writing down this dream of what it is that I am doing today. So that's basically sort of how it started. I started freelancing on the side for a number of years while I was, raising my family. And then I never saw myself as an entrepreneur or business owner. I just was doing something on the side to bring fulfillment. And it was a win for me. It was a win for the organization because they didn't have to figure out how to make me happy. I found my own happiness outside of what I was doing on the side. So it was sort of like a natural progression where today, it became nothing. It was so easy for me to give leaders and C-suite leaders and teams advice because I spent those formative career years in executive support behind the scenes, sort of like a hands-on practicum of what worked, what didn't work. Nobody considered me as a threat in any of those roles. So I had great visibility into, what was happening behind the scenes. So this is pretty much how I ended up here. And on top of that, I also found myself for over a decade teaching in the university space. So I taught public speaking, intercultural communications, media and culture before I became a subject matter expert in that discipline. And it was just a natural culmination of what I get to do today, which is run my company, do professional speaking in the areas of emotional intelligence, leadership development, and help teams, help leaders in their teams to keep their top talent engaged so they don't walk out the door and take all their knowledge and all their skill development with them.
I love that, Monique. And as you were talking, I heard so many different titles that come up, and I love the fact that you started your own business. And one thing that you said stood out to me, where you said no one saw you as a threat, right? So you created your own lane. But you have so many different talents. I heard a project manager, I heard a scrum master, I heard a public speaker. You have all of these different things, but you just don't call yourself that. But that's exactly what you are, And it's amazing because for those who don't know, those are people who help keep things organized, keep people on track, keep the team on track. So I think that's amazing, and the fact that you were able to, um, I would say, even manifest your way into those roles by finding those solutions or writing down those solutions as if you were already in that position. That is powerful in itself. So I love that. Now,
Yeah.
I had somebody ask a question, so I want to get some clarity on this while you're still on stage. So here's a question from Chris Witherspoon. Says, how does Miss Russell manage the C-suite environment? Um, and I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, Chris. You want to expound on that? But you can answer how you see fit, Monique.
Oh, of course. Just like you, that was my first question. Like, I'm not exactly sure what angle, Chris, that you're talking about, but I'm just going to go off on a whim. And when you say manage the C-suite environment, I'm just going to take it to mean, how do I communicate or convince or persuade leaders to improve their communication skills? And to be honest with you, I am in a place where I get to work with people who recognize that. I think when I first started, that was one of my goals of, oh, I think I could help everybody. I'm here to save the world. Put on my cape. If it's not working, call me and let me help you fix it. But actually, I have evolved from that, and I get to work with people who recognize that leadership development and communication skills is just, a way to grow and enhance. I think we have evolved from coaching being seen as something that's just for like bad people or people with communications problems, and it has been transformed so it's perceived to be something that is a way to maximize your professional skills and your professional development. So for me, the CEOs that I get to work with, most of them, I'm not convincing anybody to do anything. They recognize the value of leadership development and communication. And yeah, this is the space I get to play in. And I hope that that is connecting to what you intended to ask. But if it's not, just go ahead and update your question for us.
Thank you for that, Monique. And we'll circle back. So we will have a segment towards the end of our conversation where you all can have the floor and ask as many questions as you want. So feel free to just send them in. I will pull them in if they have relevance at the time, but otherwise we'll continue the conversation. So we heard from Dex, we heard from Monique. I would love to hear from Erica. You have, first of all, the fact that you're in Ghana right now. If y'all don't know, I need y'all to pull out your phones and click the world clock to see what time this is. So we want to thank you for being with us. And I know that you have a young child, so thank you for that. Thank you for your time. And I'm just amazed by your experience and your journey. But I want everybody else to hear it. So first, let's talk about your role as a director of sales. What is that, and how did you come to that role?
Yeah, so my role right now is a director of sales for Sistas in Sales. As I said before, we are the largest organization driving women of color into sales positions across the globe. And how I got in this position, wow. We could just go for hours talking about Chantel George and the rest of the team. But it was ultimately me leaving a job. I was no longer happy. I felt like I had nowhere else to go in the company. I just felt so isolated and stuck. And that's not who I am as a person. If any of you all know me, I'm always moving and grooving. If you follow me, I'm somewhere doing something. And so I just felt like I had reached the level of where I was done, right? And I needed to be okay with that. So I left my job and ended up actually attending a Sistas in Sales event in Washington, D.C. And I sat in a room full of Black women who were in sales. And I was like, oh, hell no, I can't leave sales, right? So let me go back to the drawing board and figure out what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go and so forth. And it just so happens that I reached out to the organization and so forth. And later on ended up coming across an opportunity to where I could project manage. And when they were doing their virtual summits, which I ended up meeting Monique, who hosted one of our virtual summits for Sistas in Sales. So we had connected and she was amazing. So just want to give you your flowers live so everybody can know that your communication background and all the things you do, you're a wonderful individual. But yeah, so then after the project management, I'm working with Chantel and team and got the opportunity to now come onto the leadership team and really be able to craft programming, make decisions, launch new products that we can be able to present to Fortune 100 companies to create these opportunities for women of color, to be able to put them in positions to either start in sales, grow in sales, or be a decision maker in sales.
I love that. I love that. And that's so interesting. So when I was initially starting my transition, I was looking to break into pre-sales, and I did get a job offer there. I also got a job offer in tech sales, but I ended up going post sales just to get some more technical experience, but also from that fear of the unknown, because a lot of us don't feel like we're going to be successful in sales. So I love the fact that you realized, or you had that representation by going in that room full of other women that looked like you and that encouraged you to pursue that further. Thank you, girl. I
Yeah,
appreciate
I was also gonna say that my journey didn't begin in sales. If you had asked me when I had graduated college was I was gonna be in sales, the answer would have been NO capital letters. I had a very negative view on sales. I didn't think that it was the right fit for me, but my background was in communication. So I was thinking, that I would be working for a large PR firm, telling, and I love storytelling, and I was the editor in chief of our campus newspaper. So there was all these different angles that I was going to take in the communications world. And it just so happens that I'm still using all of those skills to be able to sell, but I did not choose this actually. And I didn't know what customer success was at the time. And so I ended up landing a customer success role after a marketing role at an education technology company. And that's what kind of kicked off everything. Being in that CSM role drove me to be client facing, drove me to really understand problems and needs and how to solve them, understood how, solutions tied to revenue. And from there, I had a great manager who saw that potential and ended up, when there was a reorg, really putting my name out there to be an account manager. So then I got moved into account management, and that's where it really kicked off, where I was carrying a quota. I was scared. I'll tell you, I went got a second job because I was like, I'm going to fail. But look where we are now, right? Years and years later. And now I'm helping other women to be able to succeed.
I love that. And you were doing a fantastic job at it as well. So you said something that stood out also by saying that you didn't choose sales, you didn't choose this career, and you started on a completely different path. And I feel like we all have a very similar story there, and that's the beauty in finding your career. Like it sometimes finds you, and it's okay not to like the first thing that you do. That's what I tell people all the time. Like, I didn't particularly like the role that I was in, but it was an opportunity for me to be around other positions that I may want to delve into. So I really am curious as to why tech sales specifically though. I know you said you're in the sales space, but what stood out about tech sales?
Yeah, so the reason I pivoted from the marketing company I was at into tech sales was because I wanted to really have my skills aligned to things that I could see tangible, like tangible items that I could, an ROI that I could really account that, oh, these skills are being applied to this and this is what's going on. I could use my communication skills, I could use my problem solving skills, and I could see the actual benefits that my customers were getting, right? And so that's really the reason why I moved into tech sales. I did not think that I wasn't thinking tech sales was going to be booming and like it was going to be the next thing that took over the world for, so many years. It just so happened that that's where I went. And it was a great experience. Still, like I said, that same manager who helped me kind of redefine how I thought about my career. We're still friends to this day. She still checks up on me. We still talk about all the things that we're doing in our own personal lives and so forth. And so I'm really grateful that that pivot happened. And now it's being able to, again, just be able to pull up other women and make sure that they get the salary they deserve. They get the job they deserve. They get to the opportunities that they deserve.
I love that. Thank you, Erica. So a lot of these ladies said some things that resonated with me, but I wanted to highlight the whole point of communication, right? So Erica had the thoughts that she was going to go into a communications type of role, and then she mentioned that a lot of those skills she then carried into her current role, and I wanted to highlight that because I see some questions in the chat right now from you all. I'll pull them up a little bit later, where you all are asking about how can you make these transitions. I want you all to think about the skills that you have right now, some of the things that come second nature to you and you don't even think about, like, that you're so good at, but other people come to you. They may ask you, can you do this for me, can you do that for me, and it seems very difficult for them, but it's something that's very simple for you. I want you all to write that down, because that is one of your strengths, and that is one of the transferable skills that you can utilize to help you get to that next level, get to that role. Also, I would say, just because you're doing something in your current career doesn't mean that you have to do that exact same thing in the next career. There are certain skills that you can pull from that career. So like myself, I worked in human resources, but I had so many hats that I wore, from recruitment to program manager to project manager to people leader. And then I also had a technical aspect of it, which was a very big part of my job. I think a lot of the people just pushed that on me because I was one of the younger people and it just came easy to me. But then I realized that I could use that very skill to help me pivot into another career field, which it ultimately did. So think about those things. Think about the things that you are just extremely good at. Think about the things that you can easily upskill with for free.com or just by going to YouTube University. You don't have to always pay to learn certain things. And I actually encourage people to try to find free or inexpensive resources to help you make your initial transition because again you may not like it at first, and then also try to find people that are already doing the things that you want to do and just have those informational interviews with them to see if that's something that you will even enjoy doing, because with my transition I would say that I didn't do enough research on that specific role, so it didn't really help me with my mental health journey. It kind of threw me back because I didn't realize that I was as social as I really am. We a lot of us we do think that we're introverts, and the pandemic made us think that we're introverts to some extent. But that role just wasn't a good fit for me, primarily because I was very heads down, and I'm a very people centric person, even in my everyday life and also employment. So I needed that to fuel me. So with that in mind, I really want to talk to you all. This is just for the whole panel. What are some of the your personal experiences that that you may have went through that helped you make your career transition, or what are some of the things that? Hold on, I can hear something in the background. Hold on, can y'all hear that? Hold on, I'm gonna mute y'all really quick. Okay, I don't hear anymore. What are some of the things that you've experienced personally that may have impacted your career journey, and then also your mental health? If you're open and willing to talk about that, anybody can chime in.
Okay. Well, I will just tell you right off the top, being a mother is one of the biggest reasons why I sought flexibility. I needed to have the flexibility so that I could be available for my kids without worrying, about a job hanging over my neck and, all the things that come with that, which is actually still happening today, where a lot of women and mothers in the workforce are leaving because the flexibility just is not there. And that's part of why I wrote the book, Intentional Motherhood, Who Said It Would Be Easy, to blend intentionality, leadership, redefining success as a mom. Because when you literally don't do that, everything falls onto the reactive state. For example, like we're talking about transitioning into a different career. This is preparation. We're looking at strengths. We're looking at skills. When we're going on vacation, we're thinking about, okay, where we're going to go, where we're going to eat, what we're going to do. But when it comes to parenting or motherhood, it's almost like that just sort of falls into our space. And then we're still trying to do all the things in the same way that we were doing before. But the more effective way is to really, just like what we're doing here, is redefining what success looks like as a mom. So for me, being a mother for sure was one of the reasons why I wanted to pursue, my own path as an entrepreneur. Again, I told you I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur or a business owner when I first started, but it sort of grew on me. And knowing my personality and knowing my passions, I just wanted to pursue it in a way that I could be there for my family at the same time. As far as like the struggles or challenges, fortunately for me, when I was working in the corporate space, I used negotiation skills to work from home. And so I've been working from home for such a long time, way before pandemic. And then when I moved into my business, I mean, I had the flexibility to just go on site to my clients or coach them virtually, which is what I do. Most of what I do when I'm coaching is done virtually. But for sure, the challenges were there, just being there to be present for my kids, And then all the things that come with being a business owner. There are challenges every day, every single day. There are challenges. You're thinking about your growth. You're thinking about your customers. You're thinking about, writing programming or curriculum and development. You're thinking about solutions. You're thinking about your family as well and your health. So for me, mental health is significant, and I have to prioritize it. And I prioritize it by, connecting with my friends. I love to travel. So, travel is something that I do, and I love to travel with my friends. I love to exercise, do yoga, body pumps, Zumba. You find me, if you want to invite me somewhere, invite me to your Zumba class, okay? So, those are things I have to prioritize, and I've made it my mission to do that, and I do it consistently so that when I'm in those moments where life is hard and it feels difficult, and I have to redefine success, the habits and the skills that I have developed doing those external things, sitting in nature, it makes it easier for me to cope, and not like spiral all the way out of control or take too long to bounce back when life does feel hard or it gets hard.
Wow. Well,
I can chime in as well,
go
Aileah.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say for me, as I said before, I had left my job in 2019. I've left corporate America twice. I don't have plans on coming back. But the first time was just because, like I said, I felt this glass ceiling. The second time was a mutual agreement, actually, between my employer at the time and myself, just because I had a wake up call that I needed to leave the country. And it definitely was part of my mental health journey. 2021, I, came to Ghana and wanted to really work on myself mentally, physically. Like Monique said, this physical journey of like losing weight and like that all helped my mental, my spiritual, everything. It was like dropping weights, not just the actual physical weight, but just so much stress and things that I was carrying. And then from there, I found out that my father was diagnosed with cancer. It was a different type of cancer than before. And so that really hit me heavy. And it made me make the decision that I got to go all in. Like if I have this dream to live somewhere else and to do something different, I just need to go and jump because we only get this one life. And it can, things can change, or somebody can tell you something that can change your life completely. So let's do it. And so from there, I started to take the steps to be able to make that decision a reality, and also, leave the job that I had the. This was the probably the highest. I think it was the most salary as well as the best results that I had. So I was leaving at the top of my game, which I was pretty proud about. Um, but it was also a journey, and then just a sneak peek into the wild ride that it was in 2022, that I got engaged and then found out I was pregnant, and like so many things happened, and I ended up leaving corporate America with all of that in the mix, right? Being engaged and all that stuff, and then life turned out just fine. Even on the roller coaster, I had my seatbelt on and I'm here. But it just goes to say that when you're mentally feeling something that's blocking you, or you feeling something that you can't get past, take a moment, stop, and just make some changes. It's time to pivot. It's time to move. It's time to make some different decisions, and not to stay in that hamster wheel of whatever you're doing that's currently making you feel terrible.
Yeah, that's definitely powerful, and you made me think about something that I seen online one time that said, um, it said, when you're given an opportunity and you let it pass you by, that's a sign of arrogance, assuming that you'll have another chance at life to do it. So that really hit me because I've had a lot of different opportunities before where I'm like, oh, well, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. But then, just like you said, you have people around you, or traumatic events that surround you, that make you think about life in the present. A lot of times we spend too much time thinking about the future or thinking about the past, that we don't acknowledge the present and where we're at. And that's how you get sucked into that hamster wheel that you spoke about. So, well, I'm definitely sorry to hear about your father. I'm happy that motivated you, and
Same.
propel your career?
And just know he's doing well. I just took
Good.
my son to meet his family, right? And so we have amazing photos, and he looks good, and he's feeling good. So no worries.
That's
It's
good.
good to hear.
Happy to hear that. So I'll ask you the same question, Dex. And while I'm doing that, for those, I see a lot of questions in the comments, and we will get to those. But if this is your first time tuning in, I would like to know where you all are tuning in from. So we have Ghana in the building, we have Atlanta, and then we have North Carolina on this panel right here. But where are you all located? And I'm gonna open up the floor to Dex. Same question.
Okay, so the question was transitioning and the challenges that I faced and how that impacted my mental health, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So mine's a little different. I didn't do I don't have a family of my own right now, and so my transition was difficult in the fact that I transitioned from corporate to startup. And so that was difficult because in the corporate setting, there are well-defined roles, responsibilities, and support systems. Whereas in startups, there's ambiguity and the fluidity of roles can be really, really daunting because you're wearing several different hats. And on top of that, representation it can be less prevalent in smaller startups as well. So that can feel like you're isolated or there's the pressure to overperform. And so that's kind of where my mental health struggle came in was because I did feel isolated and I did feel the pressure to overperform being in such a small startup and not having the representation of those that looked like me in leadership positions. And so to navigate that and to kind of overcome that, I tried to find mentors. I tried to make sure that I was heavily active in the Black employee resource group to create a safe space for the Black employees. And then I also wanted to make sure that I had clearly defined roles and responsibilities from my superior, because that would help me keep myself on track and also provided me with someone to give me feedback for when I was feeling as though I wasn't quite sure if I was on the right track. But embracing that flexibility from startup culture helped. And it became a beneficial because I was able to again help lead the Black employee resource group, which allowed me to open up for creativity and other opportunities that helped shape the company's diversity. So
That's very interesting that you actually experienced that, being the only Black person at your startup. I've actually not heard of anyone go through that at such a small organization. How big is your startup that you work at right now?
So I'm not the only Black person at my current startup, but I am the only Black leader at my
Okay.
current startup. And previous to this, the startup before this, I also wasn't the only Black person, but there were very few of us in the startup as a whole. So if you wanted to say there were 600 people, there might have been 60 Black employees at the whole entire company. And with turnover or sales, things of that nature, that dwindles and it becomes where you're just this little pod of people and you kind of have to stick together. So yeah, but currently I am the only Black leader and my startup has about 800 people. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, do you feel like, because I know you said you don't have a family of your own, and I don't have a family of my own either. However, I know I've experienced some I guess people overstepping because I don't have a family of my own and expect me to do more. Have you
Mm-hmm.
experienced that as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. You have to set boundaries, very, very firm boundaries, actually. Because just because I don't have a family of my own doesn't mean I don't enjoy hanging out with my friends or have family that I like to visit. In the Atlanta area, I have a really large family, actually. We do a lot of family-oriented activities. My mom actually just invited me for dinner today, and I was like, I'm a little busy. I am heavily involved in my community as well. And so that doesn't mean that you don't have things outside of work. And one of the things that I always have to tell myself and remind myself when I'm thinking about setting boundaries is my worth is not tied to my work at all. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in that. But my worth as a person is not tied to my work or the output of my work. And the impact that I want to make on my community or my family or my friends, that's what I consider, making me worthy. And so, what actually pushes that needle forward versus work? Work doesn't push that impact forward. Work doesn't push the love and the support that I get from my family forward. And so I have to remember that when I am setting those firm boundaries. But it can be very difficult. You are absolutely correct.
Well, now that we're on this topic, how can you set some firm boundaries professionally, especially
Yeah.
as a person of color? I have the answer for myself, but we are two different women, so I want to
You're
hear your
fine.
answer.
You're fine. Yeah, I make sure to first off clearly define my work hours. And that can be kind of difficult when you're at a startup because you are usually operating on multiple time zones. But I try to stick to the same work hours so that people know when they can find me. I also try to make sure not to have um, like my any type of applications like my email or my if you use Slack or Teams on your phone so that you can actually disconnect. But other things that I do is I try to take regular breaks throughout the day to avoid just being at the computer and being on and present all the time. And also making sure that my direct reports, so the employees that report to me and my supervisor know when I will actually be available to take questions and things of that nature or when I'm heads down. So I'm very vocal about, hey, I'm in heads down time right now. I'm focused on this project or this report. If you could reach out at a different time, and my calendar is open with those types of things on it so they can see exactly what I'm doing. And I ask that they do not disturb during those times. And I just make sure to reiterate that. So that's kind of how I do it. But you really do have to be firm.
I love that. Now I agree with it, and I seen Monique's eyes going back and forth. So I want to hear your answer, Monique. How do you communicate that?
Maybe
How do you
going
set
back
your
and
boundaries?
well, I'm the boss, so I
There
I
you
have
go.
I have to, but don't get it twisted. You have to set boundaries for yourself. I don't
Just even
know
as the
about
boss.
you, but you have to set boundaries for yourself. Sometimes
Hmm.
I'm excellent at it, and it just looks different at different times. Sometimes
Hmm.
the workload is heavier, and sometimes it's lighter. And I mean, yes, that's an external factor, but my goal and intention is to make sure that I have those boundaries. So there's like, okay, on the weekend, I'm not doing, this type of work. As far as communication with others, with my family, with my clients, everyone, I mean, those protocols are very clearly communicated. These are the times that we're meeting.
Hmm.
They know when we are going to respond to them, when they could expect a response via
Hmm.
email or phone. I mean, these are some of those. I think they are the simple things. What's
Yeah.
not so simple, and I work with this with my clients, this is not so simple, is controlling yourself, right? So if you aren't keeping up on your physical rest, like getting enough sleep, if you're feeling fatigued, I know if I am fatigued and I'm not fully charged up, oh my God, my boundaries, I'm not saying they become loose and loosey goosey, but scroll life is a thing. Scroll life. So there are key indicators that I know my boundaries are being pushed or stretched by myself. And so
Mm.
if you see me get on social media and I'm in a scroll life moment, and I call it scroll life, and my family like, what you doing? I say scroll life. Scroll life means I'm wasting time. I'm wasting time on social media. That means that I need to I need to tighten things up. When I'm working with my clients, especially in their businesses or in their corporate roles, and boundaries come up, it's communicating and then honoring and not feeling afraid to stand behind what it is you're communicating. So it's not a matter of I've set a boundary, it can't be changed, the answer is no. Is how do you keep that dialogue going so that your intention is honored? I had a client struggle with boundaries, and it, when we looked at it, it was a delegation thing. It was a leadership aspect of delegation, because she felt that she needed to be in all the meetings. She felt that she needed to
Mm.
everything. She wanted to show her team that I'm a good leader. I'm available. You can email me, call me anytime. But we work through that whole aspect and process of really where's that coming from? Really, how can we strengthen up some different things? And instantly, she got like 2 hours back per week instantly just from that conversation, looking at ways to set up her team and how to have the conversation so she didn't have to be in those meetings. So, I mean, there are different aspects, I feel, of setting boundaries, honoring boundaries. It's all about communication, not just with others. I think sometimes that could be the easier part. But in my experience, the boundaries that we set for ourselves, that's the most critical.
Thank you. And I can imagine that's probably, well, at least starting out with your company, that might have been very difficult for you because, like you said, you are the boss. So sometimes you feel like we don't have to stick to a specific schedule. But do you feel like being a mother also allowed you to set those boundaries as well, having compartmentalizing your work versus your motherhood?
Oh, absolutely. Because that my family is my priority. Now, my youngest kid is 18. So, I mean, they're not babies, you know what I'm saying? But when they were younger, my family was always my priority. And so everything needed to be structured or centered around them and what I needed to do for them, and also being available for my husband. So for sure, that's the easy way to say, all right, these are the buckets or the blocks of time that I'm working, and these are the times that I'm not, because I know that my desire and my intention was to be a very present mom and to, be a very present wife. And I will tell you, recently, my oldest son, his girlfriend said, thank you. You've raised such a loving and kind and great communicator. I was like, oh, yes, yes, yes. Do you know what it is to have your intention? I mean, literally, this has been an intention. Like we have family, vision, mission, etc. And I write down everything. And to hear this actually, like these literal words come back to me, I was like, wow, this is incredible. So
I love that for you. I wish that this
That's
platform had
awesome.
reactions, like, because I want to have a
Right.
reaction button, but y'all need to get on that because I'm going to switch platforms. I need my reaction buttons. But I love that. I love that. And that's something I was going to ask as well. Like, how has being an entrepreneur influenced your children, like, in their professional journeys or their aspirations?
let me tell you, I mean, well, they see me working. And I remember one time, I'll tell you, this has been a journey because my son, and I talk about this story several times in my trainings too, is when he was about 12 years old or so, he wrote me a card. And I don't have it here, otherwise I'll show it to you. He just wrote a handmade card, and he was just like, Mom, you work so hard like a boss. You need to learn to rest like a boss. What? What? I was like, okay, what am I teaching here through my actions, right? Like that was when the hustle mode was on. And that was when, I get so engrossed in something that I can just go for hours and hours. So I had to become intentional about what do I want to teach him through my behaviors. And I do the same thing through the way I communicate with them, the way I express where I'm stuck, where I'm struggling, if I'm having a hard time, if I'm excited, because I feel like when we don't do those things, we set them up to fail. They see this perfect version when you're trying to shield them from everything, and they grow up with this unrealistic expectation of, I want to be like what I saw my parents do. They didn't have any issues, they didn't have any struggles, and so when they face those struggles, then it's like, what's wrong with me? So my journey is very transparent. What I learn, my communications skills, like my kids they've traveled with me to speaking events, to client events, etc. And I feel they're doing just fine. They both have the drive. I think with the first one, the drive was, I was just like way too focused. And so now I'm trying to rewind all of what that is and relax. You don't have to be, workaholic or whatever. Just take it easy And my youngest one, like he's chilling. He turned 18 and he's in his second year of college pursuing construction management. So, we're all pursuing our various goals and dreams. And I'm just grateful that I have the chance to show them what it is like to pursue a dream, and that it's not easy, and that there's going to be great successes, massive successes, and then there's going to be some challenging moments, and then how do we get to work through that and walk through that. So for sure it has influenced my parenting 100%.
I think that's really important, especially with the age of social media and how we glorify all of the highlights of our lives, and just raising these new generations. Like, we need to see the lows. The lows are just temporary. You need to see the lows, though. Everything is not always going to be on high, and I think that also impacts a lot of people's mental health. I personally have had people in my direct circle, family, friends, some of their family, just the younger generation especially, struggle a lot with their mental health because they see a unrealistic reality, that what they believe is reality on social media. So I love the fact that you express that with your children, and you communicate those highs and lows with them as well. I think that's a blessing in itself. But this did make me want to transition to our next segment. But before we do that, for those who are still here, just type in the chat that you all are still here. Pound still here, hashtag still here, depending on when you were born. You either know the hashtag or you don't.
Oh, the
Pound.
Listen, see, I got picked on the first time I said that, and I was like, "What do you all mean?" Because y'all remember the was it 1-800 or AT&T commercials?
pound.
Well, for those who are my age or older. But let us know that you all are still here, and I have some comments that I'm going to share here in the chat. So this one says, I used to be the same way as a leader. I didn't understand what it meant to set boundaries for myself, but once I learned, it allowed me to enjoy my role more and also gave me back my life. And I definitely agree with that. Especially, I think some of that has to do with people being first time leaders as well, being first time leaders, and then also being a woman, and sometimes even being a woman of color. We feel like we always have to overextend ourselves or prove ourselves to be, stronger or better than the rest. And that actually does make me want to ask this next question here. We got somebody from Tucker, Georgia. I don't even know where that is, but welcome. So I want to talk about breaking generational misconceptions. So not generational curses, but misconceptions. So what are some of the things that you all learned growing up about life or about careers that you no longer subscribe to?
I can chime in. I'll say staying in a job for 5, 10, 15, 20
Amen.
years. Um, my first job, I had this whole idea that I was going to stay there for a long time, and I did. I overstayed. Um, and, shout out to that job. They did well, but I was there for too long. And it was, looking back, I would not have stayed that long. I would have job top. I would have had a probably higher salary. So many things would have happened. I would have took some chances and maybe failed and learned from those things and pivoted probably earlier, because I would have found out more about myself at that time. So that's one major one. The other one would be travel, right? I know that travel is booming right now, but 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I just turned 40. And so it's like a lot of people don't like travel internationally or travel to Africa, right? Or travel even to the Caribbean or, somewhere even out of their own state or city. So it's like traveling is huge. It can change your whole vision on life. It exposes you to so many other cultures and languages and things that can also help you make rash decisions to get out of what you're doing, right? Or, even to just make you think about what you're doing and be able to pivot later. So those are two major things that I think a lot of people get hung up in because we've seen our parents either stay for a pension or stay, for whatever benefits, right? The government job, all of these conversations about certain jobs and what you're going to get from them. But now we're seeing the economy change. We're seeing things, you know, jobs are not holding on to their employees. So why should you hold on to the job?
Reaction
Think
button.
about yes, think about yourself first. I just want to hop back to the boundaries piece. Saying yes to myself and saying no to somebody every single day makes me happy. So being able to be like, who's going to get this no so I can say yes to this piece of cake, or say yes to sitting in my silence for 10 minutes, right? So be able to choose yourself is something also that can be part of that, what we learned, to always give, give, give. And especially as a woman, it's like, make sure you're taking time for yourself.
You said so much. I love that. Thank you, Erica. It's so many things I want to touch on, but we don't have a whole lot of time, so we're gonna come back to it. But before we move on to the next person, I wanted to pull this comment from the chat. So the more I work, the more they value me. So this is something that I heard growing up as well. Like we have to work twice as hard to just get the bare minimum. And for the longest, I subscribed to that as well, and I overextended myself, just like you were saying before, Erica, because I believe that. And to some extent, that has some truth. But those are the areas that you don't want to be in. If you feel like people are making you overextend yourself just to prove your worth, and you're still not getting respect, and you're still not getting that level of value that your peers are, then you don't need to be there. And I think you said something earlier that may have been I think that might have been Dex that said, um, my worth is not tied to my work. And when we're thinking about making our career transitions, a lot of people are so focused on the title, they're so focused on the company that they want to work for, that if once they get the title, once they get the job, that's all that becomes their whole identity. And if you ever realize how I organize my shows and whatnot, I don't I don't focus on the companies that these people are coming from. They're coming from awesome companies, but we're focusing on the individual because that is who the company hired. And I want you all to realize that first and foremost, you are the prize, honey. You can translate this to dating too, because I always do that all the time too. So you can because you are the prize, and you are just as important to the company as they are to you. Like you are helping them get billions, millions of dollars, even though you're only seeing a small fraction of it. So value
Right.
yourself at that level as well. Do not tie your identity to a company at all, and that's very important when you're making a career switch and a career transition. That's one of the reasons why I chose the the last company that I was with and then the current company that I'm with. They know wholeheartedly that Aileah is her own person, her own brand. Don't you ask me to post nothing about the company on my page unless I choose to do that, because that is my brand. That is who I am. And you're
Mm-hmm.
that outside of, once you leave that organization. I even love what Erica said about staying in an organization too long. We were taught that growing up, and it's because we had lack of opportunity. So you got to realize the times have shifted, so your mindset should shift with it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm opening up the floor. Keep them coming.
That was powerful. Your times have shifted, so your mindset should shift too. Like,
Yeah.
mic drop. You need to pick up the mic and drop it. Okay. Times have shifted, so your mindset should shift too. That right there, you need to put it on a shirt, put it on a mug, put it on a backpack, because I think that is just the absolute truth. So we have to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Back then things were different, times were different. So our parents and those that loved us and raised us, this is what they chose because the times probably influenced that. And I feel like there's so many, it's not as easy to step outside of the status quo, because people do embrace the perception, or they're concerned more about how things look to people, because how you're perceived influences how you're treated. It influences what doors open up for you. So unless you are surely grounded in your own version of success, which I think the pandemic helped to unlock mentally for a lot of folks, unless you're grounded in your own version of success. And even then, it will be very difficult, especially if you're consuming a lot of media that shares or talks otherwise. So for me, I was trying to think like what were some of the generational um, beliefs or things, but I left the island when I was 17, and up until that time, I just have to let you know my influence from media was very limited. So even through high
Mm.
school, I was only able to watch TV 1 hour a week,
Mhm.
and so I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, and the things or the types of media that my mom brought into the house, they were things like motivational speakers and like self-development and personal development folks. So she didn't force us to sit down and listen or watch. She was listening to it herself, but we were observing and absorbing while she was doing her own thing. So for me, I
Mm.
think I had a beautiful amount of naivety or sheltering mentally from those beliefs that, okay, you are limited in any way in terms of what you can explore. Now, from a generational thing that I would change, if there was something that I would change, it would just be the silence around financial literacy and financial decision
Mhm.
making and financial planning. If I could do it all over again, that's what I would definitely change or focus more on, because I see how this type of gap or information, it just limits us as a whole,
Mhm.
limits us as a people when we're making decisions. And so for me, that was my big like fog or cloud, um, to work through and to move through, because there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of whatever, those unhelpful emotions that surround money, money in relationships, money in business, money in salary. Like there's a whole thing around it. So I feel from a generational standpoint, I mean, I sit down and I talk with my kids, and we're very all open about everything and helping them to understand things. But that's one thing that I would say, is something that I don't subscribe to. I don't subscribe to withholding emotions from my kids or my family. I don't subscribe to the notion of like, don't rock the boat, play along to get along in your family, and don't actually speak up for things that are disturbing you. I don't subscribe to any of that. So my family members are very clear about where I stand with most things. And my children are also the same. Like they know where I stand, and they know how to express themselves in a way that is kind and respectful. So that's something that we don't subscribe to.
And that's an interesting point. Of course, we can assume that everyone has the same experiences as us because they
Mhm.
might look the same, but where you were born, where you were raised, that makes a big difference culturally. And I even seen someone that was tuning in from Malaysia. And if you're still here, I would love to hear, some of the things that you heard growing up, about your career or a life that you no longer subscribe to. Like, what are some of the things that you may have been taught that you outgrew or you learned differently as an adult? Because a lot of times that does impact not only our personal life but our careers. There's so much overlap between the two, and challenging those beliefs. Um, is something that we need to do on a regular. We need to do a reevaluation. I always say have a monthly audit, have an annual
Mhm.
audit of the things
Yes.
that you the things that you learn or the things that you absorb, and you didn't even realize that you took those ideas and those thought processes in, whether it be from your um, personal environment or your professional environment. Sometimes you just need to kind of clean out that noise. I even do that with my social media very often. I do a purge because there's some people that they just don't need they don't need to be there. Their energy is not just at the technical level. The communication goes beyond that. Like a lot, I'm a believer, right? So, and I also am very spiritual, and I think that everything has a spirit. Everything has a spirit. So sometimes you have to physically remove people, and sometimes you also digitally have to remove people so that way you can uncloud your vision and your judgment, and have a clearer thought process as well. So
Mhm.
I'm curious to hear about anyone else's experiences. But while you all are on our panel or thinking about that, I'm going to go to some of the questions that we have. Let's see what we got, because we got a few. So hopefully y'all are still here. All right, so let's tap into these. All right, so the first question is from Chris Boy. It says, I come from a public company environment and we don't see a lot of women of color in CEO roles. I was wondering if you had any challenges in that environment. So this may be for all of you, honestly, because you all are leaders. So anyone who wants to answer this, feel free to chime in. I think she might have sent this when you were talking earlier, Dex.
Mhm. I think it is very challenging, um, but I am unsure of how to address it when you don't have the same representation that you should, right? I think that one of the things that I was going to touch on for the generational misconceptions was kind of keeping to yourself. And um, we talked about sharing emotions, but the sharing of knowledge, right? So that tribal knowledge, and Monique mentioned, she shares the emotions and the trials and tribulations with her children. But even in the workplace, sharing your trials and tribulations is really, really important, because I'm a firm believer that you should be helping the next person up, right? And I think generationally, that's something that's new. It wasn't always that way. You were to keep to yourself. You weren't going to talk about how you got where you got and this, that, and the other. And that's something that we network now. There's a very strategic way to do things, and you need other people instead of being by yourself. And so I would say, in reference to a woman of color CEO, it's very similar in that if their network is very closed, or if the company's networks are very closed, they are looking for something very specific and they're not looking to diversify. And so
Mm.
that can be the challenge when you are not seeing the representation in that C-suite. And so I do encourage, my peers and my network to really diversify and think about going to different conferences and learning to open up their network, because you never know what you're going to experience, but also who may be the best fit for the role is maybe not who you're looking at. So
That's a good point. And I'll try to address that question as well, because I always approach those situations when you are the only person of color, a lot of times, or even the only person of your specific gender. Um, sometimes it goes both ways, where you might receive lack of representation in those areas as well.
Mhm.
But sometimes, especially being a woman of color, I don't necessarily always harp on my individual um, struggles that I may face just being a woman of color, but I always acknowledge some of the mental and emotional stressors, because this is kind of telling, because I don't know who's watching, but I always tell people to talk about your mental health, because they may not be able to identify with your skin color, but they can identify with having anxiety, having depression, all of these other things, because those always existed in their culture. We've just gotten to the point, realistically, in the past, I would say maybe the last 10 years, but realistically, it feels like the last 8 years, where we've been talking about it more openly. We, as in Black women, we, as in Black people, we, as in people of color in general. So for those of us who are African, Caribbean, even Latin, Middle Eastern, we didn't really talk about mental health, because there was a bad stigma associated with it. But I think the more vocal you are about that, and I need this day for myself, or I'm having this struggle,
Mhm.
people can
Mhm.
empathize with that sometimes quicker than they can empathize with the fact that you are experiencing this simply because you are a person of color, even though it may be true. So I would say, be vocal in that area, because that is proved to be powerful in my life.
Shared
I was going to
experiences.
say, we also need to have some realistic views of women of color. Like you said, if they're the one and only or one of few, they're tired. So it's like, why do I want to be the CEO? Right? Like, why do I want to do it? Right? Like, I'm tired. I'm leaving. Right? So let's just be real. It's like, you have stressed me out I need 5,000 hours of sleep now that I don't, work and close all these
Right.
deals. So I am
Right.
not going to be a CEO, right? I'm going to go and launch my own company and do
Yes.
that,
Come
right?
on now.
Yes.
So
Erica, I like you,
that's
Erica.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And even then, because as the CEO of my own company, even then you're always going to run into biases. You're going to run into challenges, as a Black woman, and also, being youthful. You're going to run into those experiences. And then when you step outside of the United States, those become even more nuanced, because sometimes there's a hierarchy in a certain country where women aren't really, seen as equal, or not expected to, lead in a certain way. So you have to be mindful that you're going to run into those types of challenges when you're networking, when you're trying to, close business deals, and be strategic. I mean, this is the world that we live in, right? So being strategic about how to navigate in some of those spaces so that you can still be successful. I like to read like books from people who have been in the game for a very long time, and learn about some of the challenges that they've had, um, navigating as a Black person, and navigating, just as a woman. So I would just say, prepare to experience challenges where people assume that you're not as competent or as smart as you are, or can bring value. Prepare to, have people who just feel like, no, you should not have an opportunity because you sound too intelligent. You sound like you know what you're talking about. I've had many scenarios where I've been in environments where the questioning was like I was in witness protection program. Okay, like the amount of questions in a business setting which weren't even necessary. And when I first started, I was just, naively responding, until I really got more aware of how to communicate the, the discrepancy amongst, well, wow, you weren't asking 25,000 questions to this person that you just met. Why are you asking me 25,000 questions? Just what is the intention? What is the motive, etc. So sometimes you'll be blessed to know when you're being like discriminated against, or when bias is coming up in your interactions. You may be blessed to know because someone might tell you, or you may be able to identify it, but a lot of times you may not be able to know. And so you just have to go in with eyes wide open, knowing that there are existing challenges in anything that you pursue. Some of it has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that you are a Black woman, and you have to be prepared to just keep moving, because we're not going to sit down. We have work to do for ourselves and for our families, right? So that's the bottom line.
Aileah, but the positive thing of this question is like the flip side of this is like find those spaces where there are the CEOs, right? There are summits and conferences and meetups and spaces that these CEOs are. And so put yourself in those rooms so you don't just see the negative view that they aren't there, but then switch that and put yourself in spaces where they are there to change your view. The same way you said to filter out these negative images on social media, and do that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll help change your view. And maybe it's only, you're only sitting with 5 CEOs, but all of them are CEOs, 100%, right? So that changed the whole ratio. So just changing your view and changing where you are and how you position yourself would be great.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point. And even thinking about sisters and sales, um, so Monique, I don't know if you have heard this growing up in the Bahamas, but in the States, and Dex and Erica, y'all can let me know if y'all heard this as well. But a lot of times we were, as women of color, we were taught that like other women of color, Black women, were just rude and nasty or mean, right? Like you couldn't really be buddy buddy with them in a corporate environment. And I see that to be the complete opposite now because of these environments like Sisters and Sales, or these other organizations or platforms like myself, where like mine, where we're all sitting down collectively and having conversations. Um, so have you ever experienced that, or did you hear that growing up in the Bahamas as well?
No. Mm-mm.
That's good.
No, I didn't. I think my mom was just very intentional about, her mindset and her outlook was very different. So she worked in the
Mm-hmm.
Ministry of Tourism for a period of time, and then she was a teacher for most of her life. So, I wouldn't hear anything, or nothing was planted in my subconscious or in my mind to say, okay, another Black woman is not going to be looking out for you, or you have to. I didn't have any of those exposures.
And sometimes, honestly, it's not even just hearing that in the home. It's just being in school. You never know what other people are teaching their children or what they're exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So for myself, I went to public school. I went to magnet schools. I was outside, and I'm still outside to this day. So I was just a kid that was outside, and you just learn a lot of things just by being in certain environments. But I'm glad I never subscribed to that just because of how my mother raised me specifically. But just hearing those things and then also coming into the workforce, I could see that some women do operate that way. But then you also have others that are a little bit more, neighborly, and they're willing to lend a hand and help you. And I think that's what we need to think about. Just like you were saying, Erica, there's more positive than there is negative in a lot of the cases.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So we got some more questions rolling in. We're coming to a close, but that happened really quick. I think our generation changed the narrative. So she said, I experienced it actually, and I think our generation changed the narrative. I would say so. So if you're a millennial, or Gen Z, maybe shout out to y'all. So I do have the answer finally from the person that is from Malaysia about their experience. So this is what they had to say,
Very nice.
and I'm gonna let y'all read it because it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and
it's
I think
very similar to what Dex was saying, right?
yep,
About like
exactly.
not tying your worth. So yeah.
Yeah. For your
That's
output, the things that you achieve,
Mhm.
your work, your title. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and sometimes it is cultural, but just like Dex said, your worth is not tied to your work. So find out who you are first and foremost, and stick to that. Like I was saying earlier, don't get so caught up even when you reach that career goal. Don't get so caught up in that alone, because just like Monique said earlier, you may be here today and gone tomorrow. I've seen so many people unfortunately post that they accepted a job offer and then it was rescinded because the company decided to do layoffs. And to think these are big companies, so people already attach themselves to being a insert, whatever the creative term of that company is, and it just shatters them. But if you always come
Yeah.
as Monique, if you always come as Dex, Erica, or Leah, that's not going to shatter you, because you know that you can step into the next environment the same
Mm-hmm.
way.
I think the other thing is redefining your dream job and not tying it to a company. Like if your
Mm-hmm.
dream job is to be the head of product management, don't tie it to a actual company.
Company.
Please say that again.
Don't tie your actual dream job to a company. It'll help alleviate so much stress and
Yes.
anxiety when those things happen, because you're still going for the role that you want, or you create the role you want.
Yes. Very much so.
I, I completely agree with that. Did you want to say something on Dex?
Oh no, I was just saying I agree. That's completely and utterly the right way to think about it.
Yes, I agree with that as well. So I have some questions that I'm going to pull up. It's about four of them that we have left, and then we're going to transition into our close. But thank you all for taking this time out of your days and nights to be here with me. I'm really appreciative of you all and sharing your wisdom with our audience here. So let's see what we have on the table here. This person says that they are a graphic designer but want to move into the tech industry. And they're actually interested in changing roles. So, in whomever's opinion, what would be the best way to get your foot in the door? Would anybody like to take that? If not, I'm happy to.
This would be starting with those transferable skills that we talked about at the
Mhm.
open, right? Is to really look at all of the skills that you've been using, that you've been sharpening, over the years. Um, Also, I would say the skills that you actually like to sharpen, those are like the top five because those will help to tell you what you want to do next and what kind of area you would want to go into in the tech industry. So transferable skills. The other thing is if you can't sit down and say, oh, these are my transferable skills, get your network to do that. I had a great career coach. Her name is Jacqueline Twilly, and she's amazing. She had me do an exercise to ask people in my network what were some of the like key words that they thought about when they thought about me. And I got these answers back and collected them all in a list. And it'll help rediscover yourself. It'll help tell a lot about you and how people perceive you and the things that they see that you might not see anymore.
Yeah.
So if you can't do that, get your network to do that.
I love that. I call that identifying your superpower. So I
Mhm.
I I used to do career coaching a lot more frequently, but I don't do it as much. But that's one of the things that I specialize in. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm not going to charge you for it. But that's not for like millions of people to do all at once. Bear in mind, when it's free, that means I'm gonna answer on my time. Okay. All right. Another question. Let me see. What would be the best entry route getting a trade certification or going to school for tech? So I will answer this question. So tech is a broad term,
Mhm.
and it's a big industry. Tech is not just one specific role. So tech can be within the healthcare industry, tech can be within the construction industry. It doesn't really matter. But you have to first identify, I would say first identify the industry in which you want to work in. Sometimes it is easier to transition into roles in the industry that you're already in. So for myself, my industry um, was human resources, but I did do some work in the software space within HR. So I was able to make those transitions. So sometimes you can get your foot in the door by honestly leveling up at the company that you're already in, or at least getting that exposure. Even if you find a mentor there that can give you the ins and out of the position and also allow you to shadow. You don't always need a certification. As I mentioned earlier, I don't have any certifications. And my advice, honestly, is to get your foot in the door first and then allow the company to pay for your certification, because a certification
Absolutely.
is proving you have that knowledge, right, that you're a specialist in that area. um, and it doesn't always show that you have that practical experience and every it's just like a degree is not always going to show that you have that practical experience. So
Mhm.
one, get the practical experience first. Sometimes that can be by having a mentor, shadowing, or doing side projects. But then
Mhm.
let the organization tell you that, hey, we want you to get this certification or degree and we will pay for it. All
I
right.
was gonna say spend as little money out of your pocket as you can.
Yeah, because then you're gonna be mad if you
Absolutely.
pay all that money and then it's not something that you enjoy.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I got majority of them. So I do appreciate everyone for chiming in. Thank you all for tuning in. I think I see some more questions. Hold on 1 second. Oops, thought I got everything. Um, awesome. So this individual did a boot camp, and boot camps are great ways to get in. It doesn't necessarily always guarantee entryway. So I just want to be realistic there that some people do boot camps and it may not always translate to a role immediately. So
Mhm.
be mindful of that. And one other thing I wanted to touch on, when you're starting a new role or when you're making a career transition, some people experience what we call imposter syndrome. Um,
Mhm.
which is really you feeling like you don't belong and you don't need to be there. And I've actually experienced this myself. And sometimes you have to really talk to yourself and say, like, well, they chose you because they know that you have this skill set. So you just have to continue showing up. Like, you're not going to be perfect at it immediately because it's something that is new. You're in a new environment, but you still have what it takes. So, have you all experienced imposter syndrome? If so, how were you able to overcome that?
So I don't
Yes.
even like the word imposter syndrome. Okay, like I don't like it. It's not an empowering state of being, and I think we just have to start with a understanding of what it is, because, like you just expressed one definition, And there's all sorts of other definitions. What I understand it to be is that you don't feel deserving of what you've worked hard for and achieved. So if you've worked hard for something and if you said you've achieved it, think about someone who has a PhD. They've gone through their studies, they've gone through their testing, their trainings. Are they going to feel like they don't deserve it once they have worked hard for it or achieve it? So I feel like the whole imposter syndrome concept, we have to really just have a general understanding of what it is that we mean as a group when we're talking about it. And I do feel like sometimes people use it as a catch-all clutch, to say this is what I'm feeling, when really what it is you're stepping out of your comfort zone. So it's a difference between, feeling like you're in something new, like you're on that S curve, you're learning something new. 2 to 3 years in, you're feeling strong. 5 to 7 years in, you're floating really well, and then you're getting bored. That's a different feeling from saying, I don't feel like I actually deserve the thing that I've worked hard for and achieved. So for me, I I'm working in my business. Whatever I get, I know I deserve it. I deserve it, and I'm not gonna feel like I don't feel worthy of it. If I invest in myself, if I do certifications or training, the things that I can see that I put effort into, I'm not going to feel like I don't deserve it, because I can equate my effort to the feeling that I deserve what it is that I am achieving. But if I'm in a new space, sure, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to feel like I'm maybe not as well prepared. I'm going to feel all those different things. And I feel like we just have to make sure that we're not confusing the two states of being. That one, I don't deserve what I've worked hard for and achieved. And two, I'm actually just starting to feel something because I'm, stepping out of the status quo or out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, I think for me, it's, having this conversation, our internal conversation, helped me go back and think about this more. My new definition for it is lies, rubbish, and BS. That's my new definition because it is lies, right? Like Monique said, we're telling ourselves we don't deserve it. We're putting in the work. We're doing all the things. We are showing up every day. We're being fearless, and so I love that what Monique is saying, because it's for me. It's just about like feeling like I'm standing on a mountaintop and I'm like leaning over, and my breath gets taken away because I'm about to do something that either no one thinks I can do, or that hasn't been done before, or that is something new. And I'm usually just going to jump, right? And that's all it really is. And once I jump, I'm flying because I know my ability and I know what I can do. So I think it's a healing process that a lot of us need to go through, and redefining it, and also setting like what is causing me to have this feeling, like finding what that pinpoint is, and to be able to unravel that, heal that, and move on.
I love that. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate that. So I know we went a little bit over, but I think we pretty much caught majority of our questions. Dang, here goes another one. Give me 1 second. This is a lot, so I'm gonna put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome can also come from your environment. And so I completely agree that a lot of times it could be that you are in a new space and that you are being pushed and encouraged to grow. And so you may feel like you aren't ready for that. That I do believe you have to be able to differentiate between the two. But imposter syndrome, in the way that it's been defined to me, is basically that you believe the achievements that you have gotten are due to luck versus your ability. And so when you think about it in that manner, sometimes being the only, right? Someone will be like, oh, you're only a manager because we needed a diversity, or something like affirmative action, right? You're only at this school because we needed 10% Black people or 10% people of color. And so that is where imposter syndrome can kind of come in. It's not that you don't feel that you didn't work hard or that the effort was not there. It's that sometimes your environment makes you, or tries to make you, believe that you do not belong there. Like you're the only person in the boardroom. You don't deserve this seat at the table. And so, yes, the same way that you would differentiate between, is this me being in a difficult situation or a challenging situation, you should also identify what it is that got you there, and understand, that you have the qualifications with self affirmations, or as I call it, a brag book, that where the things that you've done.
Right.
And also having a personal board of directors. And I call it that, where it's just a support group around you of like-minded peers that may be in different fields, but they can also, as stated earlier, that to pulse your network, to say, hey, you know why you're here. Remember why you're here. These are the accomplishments that you have done, and this is why you were chosen for X, Y, and Z. So, yeah.
I love that. Come on now.
Yes, yes,
Especially with
yes.
the personal board of directors. We may have talked about this on this platform before, but expound on that, because I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of people know the significance of having a board of directors. One of my board of directors is in the comments right now.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
always say that you should think of yourself as a business, right? So if you are the CEO, even if you don't have a business, you should think of yourself as a business, and what you want to put forth into the world, what impact you want to have. And each business has like a C-suite. So they may have and all these different advisors, right? They may have a financial advisor, they may have a CIO, they may have a CFO, all of those things. So I try to have a personal board of directors in my life that I can reference when I'm having trouble. So you may have a career coach, but on top of that, it would be a personal, yes, advisory board, right? And so it could be, one person could be my mom, right? Because she's great at finances and things of that nature. But it could also be someone that I met at a previous job that may have been the CIO or the CEO. And I made this connection, and then I may bounce ideas off of them on how I want to pursue X, Y, and Z in my career, or how I want to start this other business, or whatever the case may be. And so you kind of flesh out that advisory board or that board of directors with different people who have different skill sets than yourself. And that way you always have this group of people that you can bounce things off of, and they're trusted, right? So that when you are feeling a little inadequate from imposter syndrome, or you are unsure about a certain challenge, then you can bounce these ideas off of them, and they are there to encourage you and support you and guide you to the appropriate resources.
that's amazing. Thank you for that, Dex.
Of course.
I was also going to say they're also there to provide you with criticism that you might not want to hear.
100%.
So just make sure you're not thinking that your advisory board is supposed to agree with everything and say yes, because it'll be like, I don't think so.
No, that's an important part of growth, is being able to accept constructive criticism and feedback. And your personal advisory board or your personal board of directors should be people that you trust when they say something to you, regardless if it's good or bad, that you take that and you internalize it and you understand where it's coming from. It should not be yes women or yes men at all.
That's a good point, because that can be your first exposure to preparing for the corporate world, because you're going to have to at some point receive some type of criticism. So, and that can make or break your career.
Absolutely.
So if you're not able to show up and show that you're willing to accept criticism and actually develop from that and grow from that, then if you have aspirations to be a CEO, more than likely you're not going to get to that level, because that's a part of the process. You have to be able to take criticism upward as well as be able to provide that. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Erica. Okay. Well, we are coming to the close, but I really appreciate this conversation. As I mentioned, you all, mental health is pretty much a part of my life every single day. It's super important to me. And I think that we should embrace it. We should talk about it a lot more, and we should do things to help us find some peace. So what that means, taking some time for yourself, working out, like Monique said, making sure you actually have a separation from work in your personal life, like Dex said, making sure you don't have your certain applications on your phone, or even in my case, actually having a completely separate environment in my home where I work versus where I play. Once work is over, I'm not in this room no more. I don't see it. I sometimes I'll come here and I realize that I left a whole meal here, and I'm like, I'm glad no bugs came in here, because when I'm done with work, I'm done. So sometimes having that separation can help as well. But that's really important. Just make sure you all find what your comfortable space is, so that way you can always develop and you can grow. Because if you're not taking care of yourself in your personal life, it is going to be a direct reflection within your professional life, and you're not going to be able to excel. These are very accomplished women. These are also very busy women. Some of them are mothers. Some of them are, all of them are leaders in their own right, professionally and personally. And they all find a way to have that balance. So that is very important. I know we are a platform where we talk about how you can transition into the software industry, but I did want to leave you all with this message. And before we close out, I want you all to take a moment to do a self-audit. So this weekend, do a self-audit. And what I mean by that is you have to sit down and find out what your personal goals are, what your personal desires are, and then also tie that to your perception of where you believe you're going to go career-wise. What are some things that you learned growing up? What are some things that you heard that you need to get rid of? What are some things that you need to unlearn? And then also find your personal advisory board, whether that be 2 people, whether that be 3 people. Find some people that are going to be unbiased to you and not always going to agree with everything that you're saying, to help you identify those transferable skills and help you make that transition. And also be willing to explore many things. When you're making a transition, try multiple things until something sticks. Don't get so caught up or burnt out by trying to go one specific route that you think that you need to go, because as a lot of these ladies said, they didn't know where they were going to end up. So that's completely fine. Where you start is not always where you're going to end. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I hope you all have a blessed and wonderful night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Enjoy.
All right.